Are you tired of the cookie-cutter approach to education that's stuck in the last century? Are you seeking a win-win situation where your family thrives, your kid's education is revolutionary, and you still get to chase your own dreams? Welcome to Unschooled Unleashed. Unlock your child's genius. I'm your host, Matthew Jarecki, an unapologetic rebel dad and promoter of what many consider to be educational anarchy. You know the world isn't going to be won by those that just toe the line. It's the innovators, the visionaries, and the resilient spirits that are going to thrive. Our mission here is to forge those world changers within our very homes with less stress, energy, and time. Unschooled Unleashed starts now. Welcome back to another fantastic episode of Unschooled Unleashed. I'm your host, Matthew Jarecki, and today we're talking about teaching math the easy way. Math made simple. I don't think math has to be this big scary thing. I don't think it has to be, what do you think it has to be? I don't know. At least the way it was in school, it doesn't have to be that way. Some of you may have noticed that it's been a little while since I've posted an episode. We skipped a week. I got really sick. I was working a lot of hours at work and probably overloading myself, and I had zero energy. And keeping in the spirit of making this sustainable, I decided to not record an episode. So I hope I didn't let too many of you down. I want to keep you guys engaged, but at the same time, I was not feeling good, and that's just the way it worked for me that day, or that week. So I'm out of it as of today. I think today's the first day I felt normal. I've been sleeping tons of hours to get over this. I don't know what I had, but I appreciate your patience. So with that, let's dive in. Today we're going to talk about how to make math simple, how to make it fun, engaging, how to keep your children engaged in math. And the way we're going to do that is to reimagine how children learn math by focusing on short, efficient, and engaging sessions that build confidence, eliminate boredom, and accelerate mastery, I hope, through intentional and progressive repetition. I think in 2025, as we sit here, it's mid-January, 2024 is in the past, and we look off into 2025 and we want to put priorities on 2025. And I think a lot of us who have children doing home education, we're focused on math, at least when they're young children, probably older too, I'm not quite sure. My children are 6, 9, and 11, so I can speak intelligently about some of the strategies we've used to get our kids up to speed with that. And when I say up to speed, I mean to the limits of their understanding of what they're able to process and able to learn. We want to move as fast as they are able to. That is a whole strategy in itself. But we're going to talk about in particular how to apply some of that today in the nuances of how to learn math, okay? From what I've done and what I've learned about my children and myself, to be frank. So what's wrong with math today, with the way we learn math today? Well, one, I think the repetition sucks. The whole framework of sending a worksheet home with a kid to do something 30 times is making them hate math. They're super bored. They don't want to do it. They probably didn't understand it because what the teacher did is they explained it in class, had them do a couple problems, walked around the room, answered any questions, and then sent it home. And the kids who didn't get it, now it's your job as the parent to explain it to them, which I'm already doing anyway, so why send them to school? Anyways, I think that's an awful way to do it. They have 25 questions on their worksheet that are the exact same problem. It's 2-digit math over and over and over, and that's the kind of repetition that they're using in order to help them remember it. And I don't think this is a good strategy because I think it's going to make them despise it. Once you get it, you get it. Move on and move up, okay? We're going to talk about some of that here as we move forward. I think I would just crumble that up and toss it out, that whole strategy, personally. So some of the strategies I use, let's dive into that. One, math doesn't have to be a marathon. Repetition works best when spaced out across multiple days and not crammed into a single session. when I was in college, this is when I first got into math. I was bad at math, but I had to take a ton of math. And how do you get up to speed with that? Well, I created a strategy on how to make sure I retained stuff that I learned. And one of those things that I did was I had to learn everything and be able to pass a test before the day of the exam, essentially. I had to have one good sleep and then another study session after that. And the way I did that, if it was ideal, because there were some cram sessions, of course, but the way I did that was I would space it out. I'd learn everything in a session that I wanted to learn, and I'd try and learn really fast. And then I'd close the book, come back to it, sleep, come back to it the next day, try and restate what I've learned, do some more problems maybe if it was math, and keep on doing that. And the more sessions of sleep I got in between learning that stuff, the more I was able to retain it and actually use it. And what I was focused on was not necessarily regurgitating certain problems or anything like that, but having a firm understanding of how everything worked and why it was important, and then being able to apply that into a problem. So that's the strategy I would like to do with my children. So again, repetition works best when spaced out across multiple days and not crammed into a single session. So short, concise sessions of about 15 to 45 minutes for my children seem to work best. And I think that's enough to keep kids learning without overwhelming them. And it gives them some time. They get to go to sleep, wake up the next day, and we can review that, have them do that problem again. They'll often forget some of it, but then when they do it, they remember it, and that just solidifies it in their head. It also ensures kids aren't bored. And I think when they enjoy math, they're more likely to come back to it, want to do more of it. And that's my goal. So what we do is we stop doing math. I try and stop right before they would say stop. Almost like they would do maybe one more problem, but I stop it before that last problem. I say, we'll save that one for tomorrow. But they want to do it right then and there. But I can see they're probably getting to the end. That's when I stop. And then they'll come back to that problem the next day. And you just keep them going. And they got that period of sleep in between. And I think that's a great way to do it. Moving on, the power of building confidence through progression. So what I want to do is I want to have them progress through things. And I think this is where their confidence comes in. They're going to say to themselves, actually, I am pretty good at math because I work hard at it. And I'm able to do it if I work hard at it. And they get answers right. But you don't want to have them get the same things right over and over and over again, like two-digit math, where they get bored, right? And it's a balance there. So what I suggest, again, my kids, we've been doing home education this whole time. So we started with just single-digit addition to build a strong foundation, focusing on the concepts, not necessarily writing it down. And eventually, once they understand, and we expanded it out to big concepts. I mean, even multiplication. We talked about before we actually even started doing written addition. But we wanted that firm foundation, and we would just talk about it, and they'd be able to do math in their head before they would actually be able to write it down. So the reason I did that was because it builds confidence. They actually think they're good at math because they're able to get it, process it in their head and spit it out. And they are good at math when they can do that. They just can't write it down, so they're going to lose track. That's the next thing. When they're not able to progress through a math problem, if they're probably because of the complexity, they're going to have to write it down. And now they see a need, so we actually start to write it down. So we gradually move into two-digit math, right? Where we're doing addition and subtraction. And as their confidence grows, we move beyond that. And we do it very quickly. So each step reinforces previous knowledge. So that's my premise. And it creates a natural repetition and mastery. So for example, once we learned single-digit math, well, now let's do two-digit math. Once we learn how to carry the one in addition or borrow or whatever it is, in two-digit math, we can very quickly progress up into not just like 2, 3, 4, 5 digits. We can go up into My son, my second oldest, recently just started diving into math again, and we were able to go from 2-digit math all the way up to sextillions, adding sextillions together. It was like 7, a whole bunch of random numbers, but that's a lot of numbers. And he was able to carry the one over or carry the whatever over, have whatever the numbers were. But he got that repetition by us progressing very quickly. And the problem looked very scary but engaging at the same time, because it's like, do you think you could do this? It's like, oh, wow, that's a big number. I don't know. It's like, okay, that's right where we want to be. It's like, I don't know if I can do it, but I want to give it a shot because I think I might be able to. That gets those wheels turning. They might run into a problem. That's okay. But once they get it, boom, 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 they're carrying that one over and they get that repetition. And I think that's really good. I think that builds their confidence. And then they see this huge number that they were able to do. I think it's a lot of fun for kids to be able to say that they were able to do that. Moving on, how progression encourages a natural repetition. Well, I already covered some of that. Sorry, got ahead of myself. But let's frame it in a little bit of a different way, because it's not the only kind of progression or repetition that we can see. Let's say learning subtraction after addition builds repetition within there. So it does it naturally. So once we move on to subtraction after we've learned some basic addition, we don't need to have a whole ton of repetition for addition. Let's move on to subtraction once it seems like they've got that ironed out. And we're going to then progress by increasing the numbers with subtraction. Now we got this big number. Well, what do you have to do when you subtract two big numbers? You got to write it out. So they learn how to write all that stuff out, and they get that repetition of adding again within the subtraction, if that makes sense. If you remember going back to longhand to subtraction, where you're writing out this big number, and then you got to put the 0 in the single digit spot when you're working on the second number, and the third number you got 2 zeros in the first 2 digits, and hopefully you understand what I'm talking about. That right there is doing addition in the subtraction. So they're going to get some built-in addition in there, and it's just going to reinforce, but at the same time keep them engaged because they're learning something new and doing something that is probably more difficult than previous things they've done. That's the kind of repetition that I think is really cool to find within math. And I think each new skill reinforces and builds on what came before and ensure these concepts stick in their heads. And then we go to sleep and we wake up and we do it all over again and see where they have some misunderstandings. They might have more questions, but we really, 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 really iron out the concepts as opposed to just writing it out. But again, we use writing it out to demonstrate the understanding of the concepts. Hopefully that makes sense. Also, something for natural repetition is you see something in real life, do it. Have them figure it out. Give them the opportunity. We run into those problems every once in a while, and it's like, hey, here, look, you can actually use your understanding of math and apply it here. And then that reinforces the value of understanding that math. And hopefully keeps them coming back. Moving on, keeping math fun and avoiding burnout. So what we do is we focus the majority of days doing math. That's what I try and do. Instead of perfect daily consistency, right? We want to be flexible. We don't want to be too rigid, but we do want to be consistent in learning something. And again, when we're interest-based, child-led learning, we might not be interested in this season, and that's fine. And we just drop it completely because what we don't want to do is make them hate it, nor feel overwhelmed or anything like that. We want to point out the value in it and make it engaging and fun. So we just focus on doing it the majority of the days when we're into it. We mix in games, maybe puzzles, fun challenges to keep their excitement alive. We might do it with something that they're really interested in. For example, we were interested in buying gifts for each other during the Christmas season. Well, that involved math, so we had them do the math, and they got to see the real world value in it right then and there. Another thing that we can do to keep it exciting is we celebrate growth. And we do that by, one, when they get something hard, they show it to the world, right? Show Nana and Papa, show your mom, show the other kids. We talk about it and we celebrate it. It's like, wow, that was a tough one. Did you think you could get this when you started it like last week or whenever they started it? Because it might have been a really hard problem that they never, when they first started doing the addition thing, they didn't think they could get up into the quadrillions and do math. It's like, wow, look at how much you've progressed. Look, this is what you were working on last week. And we pull out those old worksheets. We say, look at this. You started here last week, and now you've worked your way up to here. Did you ever think that was possible? That almost always go, no, I didn't think that was possible. It's like, and you learn that in just a couple sit-down sessions. And we reinforce that they can learn, and all it takes is time and hard work. And that they can do anything that they put their mind to. Hey, look, remember when you ran into a problem here and you got really discouraged and you didn't think you could do it? Yeah, I do. Well, you were able to overcome it. Look at that. And we reinforce that they can overcome difficult things because math can be hard. And one of the things we also do is make sure that we take breaks when necessary to avoid burnout. When your child seems to be getting bored, you might be done with math in that season. Now we do education 365, 24/7. If we're awake and we're talking or we're doing something, we're learning because that's what the human brain does. So when we see that our children are kind of done with something, we take a break from it. If we take a month or 2 or 3 off math, it doesn't matter. Because we do it 24/7, 365, or we're always doing education, I should say, it'll come up again. I mean, we'll do it on Sundays. We'll do it on Saturdays. It's not like it's a Monday through Friday thing. To put that in perspective of how much math you actually do when you do it that way, there's only, in a 40-hour work week, there's about 2,200 hours, okay? So your kids spend about that much time, probably less than that, like 2,000 hours or so at school, if you're sending them to a school. And what percentage of that time is done on math? Boom, you figure that out. I mean, like, you're not missing out on much, especially when you're able to accelerate it by not having to do all this repetition and making them bored, making them hate it, having to overcome that. They're going to retain it more when they're interested in it. And when you progress them and keep them engaged, you make so much progress so quickly. I remember back when I didn't do math. I was telling my son about this. I didn't do math basically from, I finished in 5th grade, and I don't think I did any math in 6th grade, 7th grade, or 8th grade. None. So I was in 5th grade math, no joke. That was my last completed math course, and then I had to take my 9th grade proficiencies when I went to high school. I might have told this story before, but if I said anything different, let this be the correct story. I didn't do any math for over 3 years. None. I was scared of it. I didn't want to do it. I thought I was bad at it. I was basically forced to do it in 5th grade. And then I realized I had to do a proficiency in 9th grade for math. And I said, I need to get up to speed. I only had 3 weeks before the proficiency. And I looked at my dad and I said, I don't know this stuff. I'm going to fail. I know I need to learn it. And I'm motivated. Can you teach me? And he said, sure. He handed me the textbook. Well, I got out my textbook and he said, all right, start here. Started doing the example problems, and he would just kind of fill in the gaps. I'd have to read. He'd say, read here. I'd read it. I'd come back to him, and we'd talk about it. I progressed as fast as I could. I did this after school in the evenings, in addition to my schoolwork, and weekends. That's what I did, and I even took time off. But for 3 weeks, I just hit it hard, and I progressed. Boom, I passed that proficiency. That's how fast you can learn this stuff. So if you take like 3 years off and then want to go back into it, I'm a living example of you can progress that fast. Either way, That's why I don't stress too much about it. Plus, we got so many more days in the quote unquote school year than people who go to school, kids who go to school. So I just don't stress about it. If we come to it when we come to it, and then it goes away, my kids will learn what they need to learn if I teach them how to learn, is my philosophy. Anyways, moving on. Why sequence matters, but not too much. That's what I call this section. Sequence matters, but it doesn't matter the most out of anything, okay? While some concepts need to be learned in order, for example, learning addition before subtraction, math as a whole isn't rigid. I think flexibility is the key here. For example, once addition is mastered, you can move on to multiplication and introduce that before you even understand subtraction. That's what I did with my kids. And that might sound heretical to a point, but the concepts is where I'm focusing in on. If we understand addition, we're learning 5 plus 5. Well, that's the same as 2 times 5. And solidifying that connection in their head right then and there. Again, I introduce concepts way early as they can grasp them or they're interested. And then we start to, again, put it on paper after we've solidified some of the concepts and we've solidified mental math. That is, I think, a great approach for many kids, maybe even most kids. So we even moved on to exponents before we fully grasped multiplication, or I should say like division, stuff like that. Because in my head, those are all linked. Then we started to learn division, and we learned, just all the different things in math, right? We learned algebra before we actually learned even division, because you start to learn algebra or division within algebra, which is kind of cool. But really there was a need to learn division, and that's why we started to dive into it. Without going into too much detail, I really just played it by ear, played it by sight, played it by what I felt they might be able to grasp right then and there. And I think that was a good move on my part, because we'll get to all the concepts. There's no way we're moving on to calculus without learning subtraction, okay? But I really wanted to solidify those concepts, and then we could write them out. We learn it from that, because I think that's important too. Allow your child's interest and natural pace to guide the sequence when possible. That's how I've done it. And again, take breaks, because you don't want to burn them out. Moving on. Making math tangible and meaningful. What we do in our house is we use real world examples, like cooking, shopping, building, budgets, math for money, like that kind of stuff. You could even do it with building with Legos to make some abstract concepts come alive. One of the things we did is very early on, the first things we did when we learned math was we got these, I don't know if you've seen these, I don't know what they're called, but they're little plastic blocks that connect together to make, you could just, it's like a Lego, but it's not a Lego. They're bigger than Legos. And they just got one knob on the top that you can put one on the other and just make this long strand. And each one of those have letters on it. So you can mix and match, and they spell words, okay? I got it for both words and using math, because we taught them how to, phonetics, with that. But I found it very helpful to be able to use that with math. So what I would do is teach them basic concepts with those. So I'd say, what's 2 plus 2? And I'd put out 2 of those blocks, and I'd put out another 2. And then I'd have them connect them together, and they'd count it, and they'd say 4. And I'm like, yeah, very good. And we just keep on doing that. And then we got up into, well, what's 10 plus 10? And then we break it down into blocks of 10. And we connect it together and put those two together, and they'd count 20. And say, very good. Then we'd learn about multiplication. Well, look at this. This is 2 times 10. And I'd show them how to put that together, like that concept together. And we were learning multiplication right off the bat at 5, 6 years old. And I think it was very, very helpful. And it made it very tangible too, because when they get out their stuff and they're counting something, it doesn't have to be the blocks, it could be anything really, but the blocks were very useful in this way. They could count what they had. They could add stuff together. We taught them how to count on their hands, just as a useful tool. We did a whole bunch of stuff like that. But what we want to do is bring math off the page and just explore patterns, solve puzzles, do experiments hands-on, make it very, very tangible and meaningful, something that applies to their life. When they want to buy something, we do math with their money. Every time they make money, we have to allocate it. That's how we learned percentages and made it meaningful. 10% goes to giving, 50% goes to spend, the other 50% goes to save of the rest. That's how we do it. And now we're introducing an invest jar, which would be really cool. That'll be my oldest just got an invest jar for the new year, and I haven't explained it to him yet, but he'll be able to make investments in the bank of dad, which is really cool. And he'll see the goal is to learn compound interest and to really become a saver, or an investor, I should say. But our goal is to, make math very tangible, connect to their interests, that kind of thing. And I think the more you can do that, whether it's learning physics through making paper airplanes, or when we're sliding on the street in a snowstorm, talking about friction and the math behind, the physics behind everything and the math that underlies physics. Those are the kinds of things that really cement that and make it really, really tangible in their life. That math is everywhere. And I think that motivates them if you do it right. So some actionable things you can do and resources for you. So start small and progress gradually. Begin with single-digit problems and then slowly increase complexity as their confidence grows. You don't want to have them fail outright and have no clue, right? You want the gears to be turning. That's where you always want them to be. You don't want them to give them something where they just have no clue. Get the gears turning. They're going to look at different angles on how to solve a problem, and that's where you want them. And then when you jump in and explain it, even if they can't get it, they'll go, aha, I was close. And that will give them confidence, even if they didn't get it right for the next time. When they get it right the next time, hopefully they're going to get even more confidence. Emphasize consistency over perfection. We don't want perfection. If they get it wrong, that's a step towards progress. Aim for short, frequent sessions on most days rather than marathon sessions. Marathon sessions make them bored, from my experience, all around, with my experience with my kids and myself. Review past work. Keep a math notebook of your child or like a folder and have them revisit it and celebrate their growth. Like look back at that stuff and say, wow, look at this. It's crazy that you've been able to progress. You can also make math fun. Incorporate games like cards, dice, apps. Totally forgot about the apps. Synthesis is the one we're going to use. We use it for the times table, but it's going to be an AI tutor. And as soon as my son memorizes through the 15s on his times table, then he gets to use synthesis, which is I think is going to be pretty good. I don't know. Watching the preview, I'm hoping that we didn't progress past it. So maybe we'll use it for our younger ones. Who knows? But it's expensive. I can't remember exactly. It's like $30 a month or something. But it seems like it's a nice way to hack everything, and it teaches concepts rather than just focusing on worksheets. Right? Make math rather. I already said that one. Be flexible, but mind key sequences. So stick to the logical progressions, addition before multiplication, right? Stuff like that to pique your child's curiosity and keep them interested. Don't completely lose them. Celebrate real world wins in everyday life. Anytime they get something right, make sure they're dancing. Make sure you're celebrating with them. Maybe you play a certain song, but make it fun. And then as far as resources, I recommend those hands-on blocks to teach concepts to younger ones. Synthesis seems like a great option for the times tables. We've been using that, and it's free for the times table. To be determined for more than that. And there's also math books that you can use, math comics. I can't recall the exact name of the author that I looked up, and I'll let you know if it works. But we got these comics that explain geometry, algebra, all these different things, chemistry, statistics. My son has not really opened it too much yet, so to be determined on that, but it teaches concepts and then has problems at the end. Might be something worth looking into if that's something that interests you. With that said, my closing thoughts. So math doesn't have to be rigid, boring, or overwhelming. Just keep it short, consistent, and fun. When you're not teaching your child numbers, you're not just teaching them to learn numbers. You're teaching them to build confidence, curiosity, and a lifelong learning. So let the math be a tool for growth, creativity, and connection. I think they're capable of more than you think they are. So with the right approach, I think they're going to surprise you, and I think you're going to enjoy it as well. So with that, I'll end today's episode. So stay curious, stay unschooled, and stay away from the algebra nightmares. I'll catch you in the next episode. So here's where we roll up our sleeves and bring out the big guns. If you support our mission, then please leave a review. On Unschooled Unleashed, we are talking about using a radical approach to education in today's world, and the more 5-star reviews we have, the more people will feel comfortable with the ideas, strategies, and principles we discuss. It gives legitimacy to our message, and the podcast's algorithm prioritizes us so we can reach more people. You may even have your 5-star review read on our podcast. Before I let you go, I have to pause and say this from the bottom of my heart. Thank you. Your presence here is the fuel that ignites this movement. I am incredibly moved that you trust in us enough to click play. You, my friends, are the caped heroes in this story, the guardians of your family's learning journey, and a beacon of hope for your community. Be bold. Do what you think is best for you and your family. Thanks again for tuning in and taking this courageous leap outside of the box for this educational revolution. Welcome to the front line.